Thank you, Ms. Pravina. And I'm glad to be here on this platform, School Reformers. I must appreciate that the School Reformers is a wonderful platform which is collaborating with educators to bring in their different expertise on this platform for the betterment of the entire education fraternity. And I thank you, Ms. Pravina, for giving me this opportunity to be on this platform to um, talk about this topic which I have chosen, English speaking through narratives. See, when we talk about narratives, it's usually stories that come to our mind. This has been our favorite pastime while growing up during our younger days, and we have longed to hear stories from our whether parents or grandparents or something. And those stories have still been retained, ingrained in our minds. Uh, that is because maybe we relate it to our everyday lives, or because maybe it is a part of our routine life. When I talk about English through narratives, English through stories, before that, let me just tell you about how I inculcate this in my classrooms. Uh, I am an ESL educator, and apart from that, I also teach trained candidates in English proficiency tests, that is IELTS, PT, CELPIP, or even CELT. So where speaking is an important module for them, and that has to be within a time-controlled environment. So coming to spoken English classrooms or communicative English, where I have been an offline trainer. So that has been where it has been more of an engaging role, where I need to bring out those speaking abilities from the students or the candidates or the audience that are involved in this. So this topic is because when we talk about stories, our brain processes it in a different manner. It's like it retains certain of the anecdotes or the important ones that are given to us. Apart from this, apart from the story aspect of it, we can also expand our vocabulary here. And also we can talk about how English on the whole can be improved through our story speaking sessions, be it grammar or parts of speech or sentences or sentence formations or different nuances of communicative skills that can be honed and developed. So in this, what I have taken is narratives speaking about using past tenses. See, when we say past tense, the first thing that comes to students or the crowd that we are dealing with, past tense, it means like they have to use was. So was need not be used in every past tense activities. There is a rule or there is a criteria that comes when we use that. So I have taken a story that is in past tense and certain grammatical aspects that can be used along with that. So each educator will have a different set of audience based on their proficiency level from A1 to C2. So based according to that, we'll also need to change our method or maybe our content so that it can include everyone in that. So there is a story that I came across 5 years ago. This is a real story. The one that you see on this slide, it's a real story that happened around 5 years ago in Raichur in Karnataka. That time it was flooded heavily, and because of incessant rains, the bridges were submerged. So based on this, so I would incorporate these stories in the current trend, in the current scenario, in the classrooms, or whether it is on any platform that I'm teaching on. So that makes the students to relate to it. Suppose if it's a cricket match that's going on, I would bring in instances related to cricket, or maybe their players or anything related to that game. During Olympics, it was maybe about Neeraj Mishra or Manu Bhaker or other athletes. Then during maybe COVID, it was about how they had to have a transformative life related to education behind closed doors or at home. So having this, it makes them come alive and related to that. So one of these aspects that I used is about this 12-year-old boy called Venkatesh, who volunteered to guide the ambulance which was carrying sick children on a submerged, a bridge. So based on that, there is a slight a story that has I've just created it from that news incident. So as we have this story in past tense, we can ask the students to underline certain past tense words, and we can make them maybe ask about how they use certain intensifiers to intensify the situations. So we are not only engaging them in your stories, but also having them use certain aspects of grammar without them being terrified that it is grammar that they're learning. So making it like an enjoyable journey for them. So it's not only about grammar being learned, it is about grammar being spoken. So from that, we can get words which denote those characteristics. And then the class maneuvers towards adjectives when you talk about their characteristics, about how the boy's courage, and we can talk about synonyms related to that. This synonyms, this aspect is very important when it comes to speaking module of our proficiency test, where they need to gather synonyms, and they also need to have an idea that these synonyms are extremely context based. So English is, of course, a context based a syllable and words. Like, for example, we cannot use the same thing that we use as begin, commence, start. All these will have different usages. The same way I say begin my bike, I start my bike, I cannot say I begin my bike. So those are synonyms which are extremely context specific. So when they talk about a topic, for example, we can talk about this like a courage in the time of disaster. So we can ask them to give a title to that. So when we have many students, each one will come up with their own creative titles. This also enables us to take these 4 C's of communication: creativity, critical thinking, communicative, collaborative skills. So when we ask them to do a little role play on that, or maybe a teamwork on that, they're able to give and partake or impart or take each one's their knowledge, their words, vocabulary bank. That's how they can explode or they can extend their vocabulary bank. Then apart from this, we can also inculcate in them, like the stories that have been passed on to us also have a moral value, also have some like you can say a thinking, a storyline that enables us to use it in our everyday life. From this story where I've just titled it as Courage in the Times of Disaster. So in that, they can say how selfless they are. So when we talk about the word selfless, so then we can talk about like how it is the opposite of the word selfish. So these words, for some, it might be new. So how do they use the word selfless? And then see, all these have a cascading effect. Once we talk on a topic, so it can relate to, it can flow into different aspects of English speaking, different aspects of our grammar parts over there. So this is one way where we can build a story, use particular tenses in that. And as we're talking on tenses, we can use adjectives to intensify the meaning or to modify the noun that comes in. So one part of it is this aspect that I've taken. The second one, we can build a vocabulary bank like based on, again, the knowledge or the level of the students or the candidates we're dealing with. So if it is like a Google Doc sheet, we can make tables where we can ask them to take the word like inundated. How is it used as a verb or a noun? So this will have an extended practice. If it is just for normal spoken English, yes, we can just give them the meaning, the context that is used in, and ask them to move forward. If it is something like a proficiency test where they require implied meaning, where it requires a little bit of extended word choice. So there they would have to maybe maintain a vocabulary bank. So whenever I take classes, so I always insist that the students need to have a book, to maintain a book, not a piece of paper that will just fly away anytime. So maintain a book and record your everyday work with your English practice sessions. So self-evaluation is also important, where they need to gauge at what pace I am moving forward and how the progress is going on. So even if it is crawling, it is also considered as improvement. So they need to gauge that as they move forward. So this is one aspect where vocabulary or words can be built. Like, for example, you can take the word influence. We can say that my grandfather influenced me a lot, or you can say my grandfather had a great influence on me. The different ways of how you use it, and so this will bring about variety in their vocabulary, as well as it becomes very you can say gracious to the listener when they listen to these talks. It doesn't become very monotonous and boring using the same word, so they can use the same word in different parts of speech that they come across, right? So when this title, when I asked the students to come up with the title, there were um, different titles that they came up with. They said small in stature but big in heart. Like in say big decisions grow from small seeds. And if it's like online class, then we can ask them, then I can maybe ask them to write it in the chat box or share it on the screen. Or an offline class, we can ask them to come up and write on the whiteboard, or on in front of the classroom. So that gives them a sense of inclusivity and a sense of responsibility. So this is one aspect. So you can talk about one tenses, build up on that, extend that, and then talk about building a vocabulary bank on that. Then, so it depends on, again, the educator, what they're trying to speak about it. So when we speak in past tenses, there are different ways. Like maybe we can describe the scene. Again, it talks about only the past tenses that are used, about his actions. So we can ask them to write this story in a script and then maybe underline those. Even though this is a spoken English topic, writing is essential because sometimes it is essential for the students to see their English, how it is. So they'll know that, okay, is this how I'm presenting my talk? Is this how it is going to be? So that gives them you can say a plumb line where they can make out where they stand in terms of their sentence formation or the words that they're using it. Apart from this, we can also ask about like, how was the last Deepavali celebrated? Or any function, Deepavali or Muharram or Christmas, anything, how was it celebrated? So they will talk about, they'll forget that this is an English class and dwell on the things that they did. So make them, maybe giving them 5 sentences where they need to use 5 different past tenses. So that enables them to move forward in a particular tense that the educator has chosen to speak on that topic. Then, apart from this, we can also talk about what comes in that. Like I said in the beginning of the talk, students need to get the difference between I helped them, I was helped by them. So this is like a major, you can say, a conflict that most of them have, whether it is youngsters or adults. Most of them find it difficult why was should not be included when it is a past tense. So from this, we can talk about passive voices and active voices from this story when we read that. So what happened and what was the consequence of that action on that particular situation? Again, these will require an extended hour of practice, because active and passive voice cannot be just included as one sentence in a story. So we can just let them know this is how it is used. And again, when we talk about it in a detailed format, we can give them extended sentences or examples to talk about these passive and active voices. So why is it used? What is the importance of that? And in which situations is it used? And where it cannot be used? So when we answer all these WH questions to them, so that makes it, gives them the clarity of how it should be used in certain contexts. Right. Then apart from this, so we have, so in that time that we are given about storytelling, about narratives, talking about that. All these things, all these grammar aspects, nuances can be identified and said that together this actually is what you're speaking is grammar in your spoken context. It's not only about stories. So when they overcome the fear that yes, it can be done, these things are a part of a story, so then it not only gives them confidence to move forward. So this is one way to overcome maybe their stage fear or speaking in front of people, maybe 5 people, 15, 50 people, or a crowd, giving them confidence. Um, because speaking in a corporate or in a particular environment is fine. For example, if I talk about a corporate situation, speaking in that situation is fine. But when you're asked to speak on a particular topic, is where you maybe they fumble a little bit to get sentence construction and how to hold the audience attention when they are giving a talk. So in that aspect, these speaking concepts or directives will boost that confidence when they know that okay, so it is an error-free talk that they are aiming at and giving in their context or talks. Apart from this, another concept that I have taken for today's talk is, along with passive voices, you can also tell them that these phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are something that we use very commonly, especially in our spoken format. Again, why is it used? It is used to make the conversation look a bit natural and informal way of talking. It doesn't mean that it has to be very casual type, but yes, informal, like for example, brush aside or get on, get into. In the story, we can identify certain phrasal verbs like step into. He stepped into the flood waters, or he got onto it, and he brushed aside the suggestions of his friends and moved forward on the bridge. Brushed aside. So these are phrasal verbs which also show a person's, you can say, hold on language, or maybe his versatility or the knowledge that he can uh, capture the audience with. So these are different aspects, again, according to different levels, whether it is spoken English class or communicative class, or whether it is something like a career pro class involving candidates preparing for interviews or anything across all ages. So these phrasal verbs add a bit of a natural type of speaking into our English contexts. And some idiomatic expressions, again, this will enable the students to see, once you have a knowledge of what you're speaking and how it is spoken, that confidence automatically wavers, automatically comes in. Look, these idioms are also extremely context based and extremely specifically have to be used specifically in certain contexts, because they need to identify these are not literal meanings, these are like symbolic meanings that are used. So in that small passage that we had this word pierce the air. So this one, when we hear of sirens, or the sound of sirens or the sound of horns, so in our native languages, we have different terms for that. But for that, when we locate those words in English, certain idioms fit into that, like piercing the air. So how do we use that? So it's not only informing them about idioms, it is about leading them how to use these idioms, because these are extremely context-based and extremely situation-specific. So these need to be, again, taught or maybe taken into consideration, the proficiency level of the student and whether they really need to use that in their context. If it is just they're practicing how to speak, just to be versatile in their talk, then maybe we can use it or avoid it. Again, think on his feet. That would mean that how quick he was in thinking in that. If students are listening to these FMs or any channels, these idioms are very common because native speakers use it. It's like very common to them, these idioms and phrasal verbs. So we need to practice it because we may be using it, but maybe in a very basic format, like this is not my cup of tea, it's a piece of cake, or I'm on cloud nine. So certain idioms are used, but again, in the story, building it and with a consciously with conscious mind, we are adding an idiom in this story. So that would again cause the students to think and maybe find out which idiom chooses or which idiom is suitable for this particular situation, right? Okay. So when we talk about the story structure, so how do we build it? We start with an introduction of what the story is about and how it starts. That will be called as your rising action. What are the challenges that boy faced in leading or guiding that ambulance on that submerged um, road? Then the climax, what happens and how he was greeted at the end, or maybe in the real story, the boy was felicitated by his town, by his village, and also by certain organizations. So in the story, we can cause that and say how it ended and what was the end result of that story and what we learn from that. So again, all this keeping in mind, so we have used tenses, we have used adjectives and other aspects of grammar. So at the end, when we come to look at it, we have traveled a bit in this story, covering certain aspects of grammar, not knowing that we are actually speaking, forcing grammar upon the students. So this is one of my the favorite, or you can say the most preferred choice to enable tenses or any aspect of English category to be taught to students. Yes, so this would be what I wanted to just share with others about how storytelling, narratives can help um, build our English vocabulary, and not only that, enhance our learning and thereby giving us confidence to speak in English. Well, thank you. That's it. That is my talk. And thank you for this opportunity that you've given. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Abhilasha.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to ask the participants if they want to ask any questions, if they have any questions.
Thank you for joining, though.
Ms.
Yes.
Netra Reddy also has joined. Yeah. So if anyone have any question, like you can ask. Otherwise, I'll take over with the questions. I can unmute. Ms. Manjula, if you have any questions, you can ask. Okay. Yeah, since looks like they don't have any questions, I have received a couple of questions, Ms. Abhilasha,
Sure.
from the other speakers, and some are from my end. All the points actually have been covered by you, but still I would like to read those questions to you again. So first question is, ma'am, what inspired your approach to teaching English through narratives?
That's an excellent one. What inspired me to take this?
Mhm.
Because that is how I have learned. So he who has learned to obey will know how to command is one of the sayings. So I have learned it through that. So I know that it is achievable, it is doable. So that is one of the reasons that I can direct in the way that I have come and also add some more, enhance it in the way that others can go. So it is more of a personal, you can say, approach that I've taken.
Right. So you have given examples and you have already covered the techniques, but the question is, how can our audience apply narrative techniques in their daily conversations?
Well, in their daily conversations, in their routine life,
Mhm.
applying narratives is like maybe they can build up um, this, maybe it is stories or fables of how um, they go through their routine life. So how they what they've done, maybe from the time they get up till afternoon, what have they done? So maybe they can make up those sentences in their mind, and that is one way where they can actually speak in English in mind, because speaking English in mind is the first step of speaking English verbally. So they can make up those sentences of their whatever has happened, and then use it accordingly in their context.
Okay. So coming to the challenges, Ms. Abhilasha, what are some common challenges learners face when using narratives in English?
um, okay, common challenges. It can be like sometimes they might get carried away by the story and forget about the language. That is one. And sometimes it is also about being expressive in their talk, um, which might hinder them from actually giving them the entire story in that. Apart from that, it's basically starting, it depends again on the different audience level that you're talking on. So it depends on how they need to frame sentences, how to begin the story with. Do they need to start with the introduction, or do they directly start with the story itself? Basically, words, vocabulary, sentence construction, and how they bring about the entire story, keeping in mind the time frame also. Uh, Apart from that, different English aspects that need to be looked into. Um, so maybe they can start with the basic level, and then as they keep reiterating that story again and again, repeating it again and again, their word choice will improve. So in the beginning they might find a lack of words, a lack of vocabulary, and sentence construction. As they repeatedly do it, yes, that would be one area that they would have conquered.
Okay. So, ma'am, you spoke about the inspiration. So, what motivates you to continue promoting English language learning through narratives?
um okay, what motivates me? It's like a fish takes to water, right?
Mhm.
So this has been my, um, I can say, my first love. So, and it has continued to grow better, I feel. Especially stories relate to the person very closely. We are able to not only capture their imagination, from that we are able to enable them to move forward in different aspects, in different levels of English learning. Like, for example, if you talk about maybe speaking on a particular topic for 2 minutes, they have to use that 2 minutes to bring about all the questions that are asked on a given task card or a cue card. So that means that they have to manage their time. So this is where I would love to help them to get that um, time constraint, as well as the words that need to flow in that. So it's about something that has been a part of my teaching experience in whatever audience that I find with, so that it helps me to connect to them, relate to them, and that is where I'm able to tell them or speak to them what the topics that I have in mind, so that comes to a fruition or a fruitful end in that time.
Mhm. So, ma'am, how do you see the narrative-based language learning evolving in the future?
I think it has already exploded in every aspect. If you look at whether it is British Council or Cambridge or any English proficiency websites that we look in, uh, they've already inculcated this into everything. Like maybe it is for English for teens, or English for kids, or English for adults. These storytelling is a major part of it, because that is one way, that is a proven method to help the learners get a hold of or a mastery of the language, and along with that the fluency, and to speak with coherence. So yes, this is growing by leaps and bounds, and this will be a major part of storytelling in our English classes.
So, ma'am, are there any upcoming projects or initiatives you are working on, Miss Abhilasha?
Um, well, I do have something up the anvil, but it is still in the nascent stages, and um, I would love to see it become like grow up into a little bit more concrete stage before I could finally uh, like reveal it.
Reveal, is it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, coming to the technology part, it's the technology era. How can technology enhance narrative-based language learning?
Well, there are different avenues for that, and see, when we have like you have something like a random word generator. So when we have that, so we can just give in some just certain words and come up with um, a sentence. So from that, uh, there are ways where the stories can be, built up on that. Whether it is like you have an app like talk to me or small talk or something. I'm not aware of that exact word. So that can actually help you gauge where you stand in terms of your English learning, English speaking. So technology, yes, it is important, where it tells you, um, because for some speakers they find it difficult to speak to a person, to an in person or to face with a person, because they might feel hindered or shy or any other aspect. So at this time, during these times, these technology based apps are a great boon for them, that they would be able to, like, unhindered way of speaking. Even if you take certain proficiency tests, like it is PT or CELPIP, they don't have a live examiner. So certain students feel very comfortable speaking to a machine, speaking to a system. So they feel that they're not conscious about anyone correcting it. So it's just like, they feel like wholeheartedly practicing before that. So I think, again, we'll have different sides of people who prefer technology, who prefer the old-fashioned method, or prefer someone to assess them. So definitely, yes, technology plays an important part um, to certain people, or maybe majority of them,
Right.
in
Can
context.
you recommend any resources for further learning, ma'am?
Um, like resources are plenty, Ms. Pravina. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
on
can,
technology,
right,
any app or anything
on
like that.
there are apps. If you take Cambridge itself, that has come out with an app like, you can connect with speakers, you can connect with learners of English, and where you can have a group, and that itself. Because I recommend these only tried and tested one, whether it's from Cambridge or British Council or these web apps, because there are so many areas where numbers can be misused or anything can happen. So this is better, to be on the safer side. I can go with something like Cambridge, which has come out with reading assessment or speaking and writing assessments, which gives out its feedback. So that is one app that I would regularly attend or take into it.
Great. Last question, but not the least, ma'am. What advice would you give to those struggling to improve their English speaking skills?
Like I said, even if you're crawling, it's called as improvement. But those struggling with English, it is, you can say, uh, it is an everyday process. It's not just like over the weekend I have time, I will do it. It's not that. It's like every day. Um, Maybe make an attempt to read and repeat that. Um, Maybe take a passage from the, like, for example, I took this instance of a Venkatesh, this 12-year-old boy, or you can talk about the forest man of India. So the while you talk about certain characters or certain personalities, you not only learn about the history of the land, but how it has influenced about their nature, as also well. Along with that, your English also improves. So I prefer that you take something like, on a particular topic that interests you. Begin with that. If it is sports, start with the topic. If it is badminton, talk about maybe Sindhu and how she came up. So start with a topic that is quite close to your heart, and read that again. Make sentences on that, and it's like, try to give a 1 minute speech or 2 minute speech on your favorite topic. So go on with that, along with that. I think Manjula had raised her hand.
Yes, I have unmuted her. Miss Manjula, if you want to ask anything, ma'am, you can go
Yeah,
ahead, please.
yeah, thank you. I had a question. So, Abhilasha, any tips, any basic tips for, children who are in early school, class 3 or 4, how they can actually apply, English speaking skills through narrative? Because most of the time they spend their, interaction in school, right?
Mhm.
So how they can apply, any basic tips that you would like to give?
Well, for children, applying stories for their English speaking skills, um, if you talk about these children, they'll have their own world of ideas. So we'll have to start with that itself. So, for example, if they are very interested in guitars or if they're interested in music, so maybe talk about how music interests them. Start with making few sentences on how music interests them, or a particular song that they're interested in, why that song interests them. Maybe asking them to give them few words, sentences on that. Or if they're into something like a particular like environment or something, or flowers or dogs or something, so choose a topic that interests them, that they feel liberated and happy to speak about, and then based on that, create sentences and how ask them to maybe form a title for that, and make a role play. If they have maybe a sibling, they can have a role play with that, about one child is maybe interviewing it. So bring about different variations in them that will create interest, so that they can ultimately make it as form it as a story. And some also we have to make them speak in English, rather we have to upgrade them to the level that we want them to, or the school requires them to be. So different ways, maybe it is like storytelling on a favorite topic, asking them to build sentences, or giving them words related to their music and making them to form a story on that. So again, yes, so these areas, these topics or these thoughts can be implemented a little bit in those little ones.
Well explained, ma'am. Any questions from Ms. Netra Reddy or Mr. Sandeep? We can take them. I guess no questions. Thank you, Ms. Abhilasha. Thank you for the talk and for patiently answering all the questions. Some of the questions were repetitive from my end, but I had to ask because the speakers have sent them. We also thank the audience for participating in the event. We will end the session now. Before ending it, Ms. Abhilasha, you want to mention anything else?
Yeah, nothing. Thank you so much. And thank you for the audience. And thank you for being here. And it's consistent practice that enables us to have a fluent English talk. So that is how I would end it with. Thank you once again, Ms. Pravina, for this opportunity.
You're most welcome, ma'am. Thanks for sharing your knowledge on our platform. I'll
Thank you.
stop the recording.